leadership in both our organizations at these times and point where there's such evolution is needed in these long established institutions, it's not easy. However, you and I've talked about this, it's personally rewarding. For me, around my career, it's been this balance between creativity and business. So it's attracted me in different roles. So I've worked in corporate, not-for-profit, and now in public. So that's the secret to my sauce, is being able to draw from all three of those areas. But I think there's part of it is intuitive, intuitive leadership. And part of it is also staying the course, sticking to the plan, even when it's hard. And I think leadership in both our organizations at these times and point where there's such evolution is needed in these long established institutions, it's not easy. However, you and I've talked about this, it's personally rewarding. So at Telefilm, we've done so much work looking at how can we modernize the institution? How can we modernize our programs? So now we've totally changed the whole decision-making process. We've turned it upside down. How we evaluate projects, how we're transparent in the information. So every budget allocation decision now, it's out there. People know where it is. That's a huge change in culture. That's a bit of the journey that Telefilm has been doing. But one of the reasons that I'm so excited about who you are and being able to call you a friend and a colleague is the fact that you have led the way for gender parity in our industry. And bravo, and please tell us a little bit about all of that fine work that you've done there. It's incredible.
First of all, I want to say that I've been taking so much inspiration from you in Canada lately. When we started off the work with gender equality and parity, I nowadays realize that I was kind of naive and maybe a bit ignorant, because I felt that the work that we were doing in regards of talking about women and talking about 50-50 and, going around the world. The first time I really realized what we were missing out was when I came to Canada, and I was visiting Telefilm, and I was visiting Monique Simard in what's the name in Montreal, which is another of your funds anyways. SODEC, exactly. And I realized that you are so much more experienced in working with including, you're such a vast country and you have so many indigenous people, and you have really worked with them in a way that has really been inspiring for me. Because what happened in Sweden was that we were talking a lot about 50-50 and what to do about women, and we were going to Cannes in 2016. By that time, we had actually achieved 50-50 in the funding decisions, but we were still lacking a lot of parity in terms of the bigger budgets, for instance, that men still gets to do the bigger budgets and women gets to do the art house and small artistic films. And then I actually met a woman who was the head of a film festival in Stockholm called Cinema Africa. So it's the diaspora of African people in Sweden. And she said, do you know, Anna, that in my community, we don't even know that you're working with 50-50? And I was like, why don't you? So because we haven't heard it. And then I realized that we haven't reached out, and getting an understanding of that made me really realize that I am in a white privileged bubble, and it really showed when we came into the Me Too movement, because in the Me Too movement, there were a lot of closed Facebook groups about the stories women had experienced over history in Sweden, and it's all kind of professions, but one special group was for actresses and directors, female directors, and they actually came into a very conflict of interest, because the women of color wanted them to talk about harassments, and the white women wanted to talk about sexual harassments, because they were sort of, we are talking about sexual harassments here, we have to take this later. And I realized that we are really excluding people. And last summer, with the Black Lives Matter movement in North America, that of course have had a huge impact in Sweden as well. Even though we have a totally different cultural background, really, in how we are discriminating Black people, because we do it in different ways, but as well how much we have been aware of this huge racism thing that we hadn't even started talking about that. So with the inspiration of Telefilm, actually, we have really started to work with new ways of finding parity through inviting the intersectional approach, is what I'm looking for. So we want to talk about discrimination, but we want to not lose sight of parity between the sexes, but we still have to realize that there are other discrimination grounds as well. So we are now trying to make groups and reference groups like you do, and let them actually try to understand what is the problem, and not us sitting and saying this is the problem and here is our solution. And I think that is a huge change in how we work, and we have just started with that. But I really believe that's the way forward, to do it together and giving away power.